Welcome guys to Wortheffort Woodworking. As I said in the last Make It Monday video, I'll try and do a voiceover for the artsy-fartsy stuff on it. And this past Make It Monday video, I did two different sections. I did a artsy-fartsy turning, and then I had a discussion. I'm going to go ahead and cut the discussion out on this video so you can get that on YouTube. But this is for my patrons, those that support me, just a little video. I started out just showing you the blank that I'm starting out with. This is something I've had in my drying rack for a couple years. I actually messed up in drying it. I tried some spalting techniques, but I left it in the bag with its own shavings for 3 months when I meant to only do it for like a week. So it went really spalty, but the coloration was pretty good and it was still solid. It didn't go punky. So I ended up just leaving it on my rack, and it was one of those ones that's just kind of too weird that in my normal production cycle I just never got around to it. So here, just thought I'd try it out for a Monday. And normally when I start out on these kind of things, I will turn it between centers, because when I rough them out, I leave my center marks on the bowl blanks so that I can recenter it really easily. And here I'm just retruing up the tenon. First step. A lot of times on these kind of situations, I will also kind of roughly shape the outside. So what you'll see here is I'm turning a slight dovetail. Then I'm going to use a pull cut just to get rid of the wobble and get a rough shape so I know where I'm going with on the interior. Now the pull cut, I have a hard time controlling the shape because there's really not much riding on the wood. Where the push cut, it's a little bit less efficient. You will get a cleaner cut, so there's not going to be as much tear out. But I really wasn't concerned with that. I was starting at the base and working my way up, so I was going with the grains. But the big thing is you have a much longer bevel to ride, so I find it a lot easier to get a gentle curve. So all I wanted to do here was shape the outside to a generally smooth shape and leave the rim, because I am going to be putting a rim on this bowl. And I want to talk about the rim design a lot, because as I've been turning, the longer I've been doing it, I'm finding that it's the rim that is the most tactile part of the bowl. If the customer comes up and picks up a bowl, what are they doing? They're putting the palms on the outside and their thumbs are riding on the inside. That is the only section of a bowl that the average customer is going to kind of gauge thickness, gauge the variation in shape design between the interior and the exterior. They're going to run their thumbs along the rim on the top of it to see any kind of curvature, whether it's graduated, whether it kind of 2/3 going in, 1/3 coming out on the outside. All that kind of stuff happens with the rim. Nobody reaches in and runs their finger along the interior and then on the other hand, the exterior, like us wood turners, gauging shape, gauging thickness. All they ever do is they pick it up by the rim and then they generally judge it by the balance, meaning is it slightly heavier on bottom than the top, and it kind of gives it a little bit more solid feel. So the more I've been turning, the more you see me focus a lot more on rim designs and a lot less on exterior embellishments or interior curvatures. As long as I get it a graduated curve and smooth. And right here you see I'm setting up the rim design, and then from there I'm just kind of working that shape the last little bit on the exterior. This is a push cut going uphill, if you understand the wood terminology. I did just have a fresh edge put on it, so the tear out isn't that bad, but I'm looking for that smooth feel. And now we turn to that rim design I'm talking about. The exterior of the bowl has that graduated curve where it almost starts perpendicular to the ground and begins its curve down to its base almost immediately. But the interior curve, I'm actually undercutting it ever so slightly to get that tactile sensation, so that the interior curve is steeper than the exterior curve. And right here I'm just getting rid of all the wobble on the interior, and that was that color change. But most of my time on this particular turn was focusing on that rim, especially because there was a large, about a third of it was going to be, for lack of a better term, live edge. Here, I'm turning the exterior of the rim going uphill to get a nice clean cut, and then I turned around to the outside to do a shear scraping cut to refine the shape. And then it's back to the interior to start blending and removing material to blend into that rim that I just designed. Now in our last video, I talked about that on very big bowls like this, I typically turn it in sections, where I will focus on the top 3 inches, and then I'll get those totally finished off of the blades with my scrapers and that kind of stuff. And then I'll work on the next 3 inches, get that all finished. Then I'll work on the base, the bottom of the bowl. And doing it in stages leaves meat at the bottom, so it keeps it a lot more stable. Now here's a weird cut for me, because you can see the shadow line on the outside of the bowl. See how you can kind of see through it? That's because there's a large section of it that was live edge. So I'm turning a lot of air here. So you notice I kept the gouge closed quite a bit longer than I normally would. By now I would have started opening it up to make the cut more efficient. All this does is make it a cleaner slicing cut all the way around the bowl, even when you're going with the grain. So it's a lot slower. You can't take as much of a cut. But then as I get towards the base, you can see I slowly open it up. Oh, I didn't hear. Right now, I'm just checking the thickness of that top portion. And now I'm going to begin transitioning it into the middle third. So this is just removing material. I do want you to see how I'm throwing shavings at the camera itself. I'm actually doing a pull cut on the inside. Right now that it's closed, you can watch the back of my handle come back towards me. That means I'm cutting off the tip of the tool right here. See how the back of the handle is coming back towards me? In the later date, when you watch me start just removing material from that vise, the handle is going to be going away from me because I'm cutting more on the wing. So here is just working that transition from the top third to the middle third. Push cut up to that base, and then blending it with a negative rake scraper. And I'm getting more and more confident with my negative rake scrapers, but it's still a damn slow tool. I mean, a normal scraper is a lot more efficient in scraping action. So see, notice now how the back of my handle is away from me, and I'm cutting off the wing, not necessarily the tip. And that's just a much more efficient cut, but you don't have the bevel to rise as much to control your shaping aspect, and it leaves a lot of tear out in the long grain sections. And you can see right here the color variation. One's tear out from my the pull cut, the other was sliced from the pull cut. So now we're just going to transition it in. And you'll see me go back and forth now on the base between a normal scraper that doesn't have the top bevel cut and a negative rake scraper. I've got a really heavy hook on the normal scraper to remove material. And I'm having to do this because this bowl was so big that I didn't feel comfortable with as far off of the tool rest as I had to go with the bowl gouge. Notice how clean a cut you get even with that rough edge of a regular scraper. I still kind of question whether a negative rake gives you a better edge. I just think it's a little bit easier to control because there's no way it can take as big a bite as a normal scraper. So see how the back of my hand on my arm is kind of jiggling? Because it's taking a much bigger bite, much more aggressive tool, and it's having to hang off quite a bit farther off the tool rest. Whereas this tool, look at my hand, it's nice, smooth. It's because the tool itself cannot take off as big a bite. I did this angle right here because I want you to notice where on the curve it is cutting. So you can judge the smoothness based upon where along that angle it was. And after I did all the scraping, got it off the blade as happy as I was, it's time to get all those bug holes filled out. And this is something I do on negative edges because I don't like bark and I want to actually remove a little bit of the wood to get it cleaner. So I take the wire brush to it. And yes, I truly hate sanding with a passion. I basically started about 220 because I did do that negative rake scraper and focus a lot of time to get the tear out. So this kind of just blends it all together, but it is boring as hell. Now it's the time to flip it over. A lot of people left comments that what this jig is. This is a vacuum jig that my dad made for this one way. I don't have a vacuum system, and it was just there on hand. I just use it as a jam chuck on the interior, same as I did with a tennis ball, or when I used to put a kitchen towel on top of just a hunk of wood. I kind of put a slight curve on. All the force is coming from the tailstock. All the stability is coming from the tailstock, and I'm taking very, very light cuts. So, yeah, you don't really need that much. And once again, starting with about 220 just to blend it all out. So here you go. You end up just need to remove the last bit of that tenon. I'll take off quite a bit of it I'm actually using a spindle gouge right here, just because, yeah, I did. That'll give you an idea of what the finish is like off of 220. And then a chisel and a hook tool just to remove that little nub. I don't know why you can see a little bit of the center of the nub right there. I think that's a compression. I don't think that's the bit going through. Don't you love the coloration of spalting? Look at the various differences. And this particular blank had a crotch piece. You can see the feathering going down the middle. There's a very edge of one blank off the other. And this was the non-optimal piece of a crotch section. Generally, one side is going to be waste if you're going to get the most flame. And this was a waste side, and yet still, truly a gorgeous piece of wood. Look at all those colors. Well, I hope you got it. The finish is just walnut oil. I'll do one coat of walnut oil pretty much every day for a week. And then the last little bit, I'll put a little walnut oil wax mix and buff it up to get a really clean shine. A low gloss shine. But here's a little before and after. Kind of thought it was a cool effect that I did, but oh well. Well, I hope you enjoyed the commentary. I'll try and do this for future videos where I'm just doing the artsy-fartsy stuff as a bonus for all my patrons. Thanking y'all for y'all's support, because man, is it really helping in this downturn of the economy. Haven't been able to work at art market all year.